And I'm curious too, as a kayako of RomiRomi, how does it, this is just a really key question right now around how do we share cultural practices and ways of knowing and ways of being that are intrinsic to humans, and also teach about cultural appropriation.
I don't think there's an easy answer to that, and it's something I think about often. The way I've been moving with that has been to have discussions on it. So it's actually a section of the training is to discuss some of the different ways that different non-Māori healers have approached the practice. So some people say like Māori healing trained rather than Māori healer, but also the history of non-Māori taking things from Māori people and the sensitivities to that, but also speaking to, as I said earlier, like my goal as a kayako is to share and activate as many healers as possible. And in Australia, many of those are non-Māori healers. And many of my non-Māori clients have a Māori heart, or an Indigenous heart, or I don't know, they have that ability to share. And I've seen some really, really, really powerful work from them that wouldn't have been able to come from me because of who I am. So I honour that, yet I also speak to what is there. Initially, when I was first deciding to do training, I reached out to a mentor to work through that because I felt really a big responsibility and a real desire to honour our Tūpuna, this wisdom, the practices, because for me it's deeply sacred. At the same time, that had been the calling. I came to the conclusion that I can't control the actions of trainees, but I can do my best to educate. And then once they fly, they fly. And that's always that sort of tuakana-taina relationship. There's a point where they have to fly and choose their own actions and have their own repercussions and their own benefits from what they've gained. And just like with us, we're in different processes, things don't always go smoothly. And sometimes we do the wrong thing. Sometimes we say the wrong thing. Sometimes we hit the wrong point. That's part of the journey. Maybe it's like a naivety, but I have this like deep trust that those who are drawn to me need to be there for whatever reason. I might not understand the reason or why their tūpuna guided them to me, but they're here. And so I have a deep trust in that, whether it's like a tauira or a client or a co-creator, however that is. That's pretty strong in me.
I'm just appreciating what you're sharing about the piece between perpetuating healing, perpetuating culture moving forward, and also trusting in a tauira's both authenticity and experience working.
In terms of, Te Ao Māori coming more globally being understood, sometimes people get confused with spirituality because they feel like the Buddha view is that we're just basically aiming for io. We're aiming for that sense of kore and amplified feeling of expansion. And any time that different atua or energies come in, or different dimensional things come in, you're being asked to ignore them because they're not real. Whereas in Te Ao Māori, we're like, come on, work with me, move here. They're very real to us, and they're part of our daily existence, and we are collaborating with them often. And I think that that's the key difference to acknowledge in terms of our work, and for people to understand that, so they're not feeling that bodily dissonance in their own practice. And are you aiming to have that sense of ekore all the time, or are you wanting to dance with these atua because they want to dance with you?
I love how you're really addressing like spiritual bypass through the frame of na atua. Yeah, I'm just curious about your experience of cultural trauma in the body.
That's a really good question, because it's a lot of who I'm seeing here. Because in Australia, in Perth, the trauma people are experiencing is they're not having been able to access, whenua or their tūrongo waiwai. Sorry, my main skill set is being able to feel when people are in alignment with their potential. And so it feels like in not being able to acknowledge their ngākau or their manua that is Māori, that is calling them home, their tūpuna are calling them, and not being able to even acknowledge that because of whatever conditioning they received here, or lots of people who are in Australia, and I'm not speaking for all families, but lots of people are coming away from some of the maybe darker sides of our culture that have arisen from that trauma, and so maybe they've been told stories about that rather than the beauty of our culture. So that shows in the body in terms of how the energy flows. It's moments of time that we get that in our existence, but we're looking for that flow where it's just going around. When people are repressing a part of themselves, and it can be culture or not culture, it's more like that you'll come to a point and there's a block, and it's wanting to express. You can feel the energy wanting to go there, and yet for some reason that's not yet accessible.
So would there be questions that you check in with yourself regularly? Like, where's my energy blocked? How does my energy, what message?
Usually if I'm feeling blocked. Like if I'm feeling blocked, I'm like, okay, what are the energetics here that aren't in alignment for me? And
is there a way that you touch into that for yourself?
It's a learned experience. So over time, I feel like this has been my experience as a healer, that I can't help but, as I'm working on bodies and listening to other people's lives, have that reflected in the areas where the energy isn't flowing optimally in my life, or nourishingly, or in respect of others. It's like an constant observation of the impacts that actions or just waiting or whatever have, and then over time learning the patterns that are more in alignment and feel more in flow. If I'm feeling overwhelmed or a certain emotion, I'll ask, is this mine? People's wairoa will begin visiting to educate me on what I need to be able to hold when they're coming. And so sometimes I'll be feeling something and I'm like, gosh, I haven't felt this feeling since I was 20, or it's like, okay. And then ask that question and then be aware that it's someone else. But in my own life, it's a range of tools depending on the circumstance. And
I really love the question too of like, what's my relationship with this feeling? And is it mine? And I'm also curious if you mihi to the tūpuna of when you're in a session with someone, or if there's a way that you acknowledge. I'm just feeling in that acknowledgement of this how that's like coming through, and I'm curious if
it really depends. I feel like they're just with me all the time, so I don't always mihi to them. But I find that different tūpuna come through depending on what the person's holding. I have a few like back ones that come when it's like really like heavy stuff, and so I normally know when they come before a session. I'm like, whoa, so, start preparing myself. But they're not there generally in most sessions. It's like one of my main tūpuna who works with me in sessions. I don't actually know that much about her line because she was whāngai. She works for me on the daily, and then the others come in depending on what's needed. And I also find, I don't know if you find this, but sometimes I need the words that are coming through are asking forgiveness from the tūpuna of the person lying on the table before we can even begin the session. And so I feel like I'm mihi in that way. I'm very much a person who speaks to energy, so it depends on the client. And in coaching I do, yet in RomiRomi I tend to only offer guidance or words when they ask me, because I believe they've had their experience and that's their experience to have, and their experience to share their story if they want to, or ask me what I saw if they want to, and then I'll respond. So sometimes it will come through that, oh, this Atua was here, or this tūpuna. And sometimes there's a different feeling, like when someone's on the table, it's almost like there's a different feeling from I'm just seeing what's stored in the body and I'm seeing the experience, which doesn't need to be voiced. And okay, someone is here and they want to speak. In my body, it feels really different. And sometimes it's really funny, actually. I was just thinking, a client of mine, this was pre-Rahui time, and his dad came through, and initially I was like, no, it was like 3 times, and then my music turned off, and I was like, okay, I have to talk, So sometimes I do push Tūpuna away initially, unless they persist, because I feel that person is in their experience.
Such a beautiful discernment in the healer for honouring their relationship to their Tūpuna and really waiting for that. Just really checking that you've got that, real need.
Yeah, and I don't think that came from experience. I think initially when I first began doing this work, that I wanted to be like, this is what I see now, validate me. There was that sense of, oh, it's all open, and like, I'm telling you, and that didn't feel good in my body after a while. It was like, I'm trying to get validated for the tohu that I'm seeing, or that's so, it's not my role. We're more of a vessel, and Wairua and Tūpuna aren't always good as well. So it's that discernment of knowing and trusting that we're also able to work with energy wisely.
And I wonder if that's also why we have such a need for wānanga spaces, to be able to check and learn and get that validation and start to, because a lot of the role of the healer is that self-trust and yet that what you're speaking to, that the real responsibility of being in that integrity when you're in a healing session, especially when someone's coming in a vulnerable place. And
I loved that when you said that, like when we spoke about that responsibility as a healer. People are gifting us their traumas, their dreams, their hopes, their shame. They're gifting that with the hope that the space that's created can be alchemized for that to be a different reality. And it's I'm getting tingles, it's such a beautiful experience to hold, yet it's such a deep responsibility, and that we do also need a safe space as healers to go to be able to really work on any perceptions we have that are also blocking that wairua from being really pure, or also not allowing us to hold that space for the responsibility we're being given. And with great power comes great responsibility, and it is a beautiful awakening process that's happening for all of us. And it's almost as though if we take ourselves out of that process of our own self-healing responsibility and place ourselves as the teacher, without that, it's a bit disconnected.
If there's a way that you talk about protection, spirit, and I know this is also something that is really big in the healing world, and also it's such a ground in Te Ao Māori, and so I'm just curious about how you speak to spirit.
Some dimensions aren't made to be messed with, except to get out the life force or the modi that needs to be gotten from there. We don't need to stay there. I definitely am an advocate of following a process of opening and closing. But what's actually coming through to share is more around the energy of whakanoa, of the bridge between humanness and spirit. I feel that when people are a bit unsafe, it's because they're not staying grounded. And so in the opening, it's always grounding, and then staying as neutral as possible. And in that neutrality, it's like things can't touch you because you really don't care. Like, and sometimes it's a bit harsh, when someone's on the table and you're like, yep, cry, yep, yell, like there's because you're neutral, it's not affecting you. And I feel as if when people aren't neutral, or I'm not neutral, because sometimes I'm not, sometimes something's happened and whatever, that's when we're not protected, because we're being influenced by the energies. I feel for me that when I think of spiritual protection, I think that's the most important. But ways that we do that, the methods to help that is karakia, opening, closing, setting the space before, pure, blessed seawater. Like, there's methods, but I also respect that, again, back to the individuality, that people have different ways of doing that. And people will have different ways that resonate with them to make them feel safe, that make them feel grounded.
Yeah, and the value in doing our own work to unhook neutrality, and just what a gift that is too. When we fall out of neutrality, to know there's something there for us. Oh, there's a little gift there for me today.
Yeah, one of my coach I've been working with, she said that after every session she writes a like list of what she's gotten from that session. And I was like, oh, that's a really good idea, because just some sessions I feel like I am neutral for the whole thing, but it's very rare that something doesn't go, oh.
And I'm also remember just in saying this about, you know, those elders that I really respect, like I think about Manu or someone that, you know, if someone's revealing an insecurity, they might just scream that insecurity back to them, like, yeah, you suck, and just like give the full projection back, you know, and sometimes not be PC, not be nice, not be, you know, as a way of just playing the coyote card, you know.
And we have to, and I think that's what I was trying to describe in the archetype, and that's the energy that's coming through, is like you have to call them out on it, like, and just name it. And then, but I mean, I wouldn't advocate for that all the time, but it's when that energy comes through that's like
confronting the fear, like, oh, you're afraid of being called this, I'm going to call you this right now, and I'm going to keep calling you this right now until it no longer touches. Totally. And just stepping into those roles of what, you know, those archetypes that you were talking about. And again, I know that is always in a foundation of trust with the person, or a willingness to.
Sometimes it's scary though, right? Like there's occasionally, like I know I need to go into an archetype, like I know that, but I'm like, oh, you know, I'm like, especially I find it's more so with coaching clients when I do that, and then I'm like, not always wanting to, because I'm like, I want them to like me, but I've gone through it enough times where I'm like, just part of the process. There's a state where you need to do that, and then it's the reaction, and then you have to hold that and not react after that. So it's like get back to that neutrality.
And also the energy leads, like what you were talking about before, when you're trying to fix your own body. And so it's like all of a sudden it's like, nope, that cutthroat thing is just there, and it's you know, or that, like, that real warmth holding energy is there, so it just like leads.
Yeah, and it's almost like those Komatua, you know, on the paipai, they start like talking through you. It kind of just comes through, like telling you off. And but with love, I think that's the thing that, well, for me, it always felt like with love, even though you're being growled constantly, it just came.
The intention was clear. Is there anything else on your heart that you feel like sharing today?
I want to thank you for this.
It's so fun to be in the freedom of with you.
Yeah, totally. I'm so grateful, and I feel that connection, of the weaving and everything as well. And it feels this has felt challenging for me as well to articulate. I feel often when I get asked questions, it's like I can answer them quite easily because they're the common questions, but this has been beautiful because it's like, oh gosh, I'm like, what do I actually, you know, because you have that deep understanding on the same level of the mahi and how it weaves, that you can go that next layer. So I've been, whew, okay, that's challenging. So I also want to acknowledge that for the space.
Yeah. I also just acknowledge your honesty, like just your honesty and your clarity and your authenticity, just how naturally you own those moments and speak them, and how that just frees up the space for us to really look at those things in ourselves and see them as part of the journey. So I'm really grateful for how you walk that authenticity, because I think also the questions around like the current climate with racism and anti-racism and cultural appropriation, and you know, they're difficult questions to ask, to be asked of on the spot, and to attune to that, because I know a lot of people right now are feeling that they can't get it right.
Yeah,
you know, right to speak and not to speak, and what's right and what's, you know, there and there's a lot of that paralysis right now.
Isn't it interesting that there has to be a right or a wrong? Like in general, that, oh, I'm going to get it wrong. But what if you get it right? you know, what if you change something in you and others? And yes, you are going to get it wrong. It is going to be wrong. People are so different that you're going to say something to offend someone.
Stands for our fear, though, of hurting someone. We have a fear of hurting someone. And it's not just about like them validating us, but it's actually you know, repercussions of that, or and the image too of being a good person, or a tuned person, or a empathic person. Well, thank you. Just a big mihi to you, and for all that you've been holding in this healing series. It's been so beautiful to listen to the wānanga that you're pulling in, and what this offers, especially during this rahui time, and to be able to put you in the hot seat. Oh, I just want to really mihi to your nan too, because she's been so present in this whole kōrero today.
I always say she doesn't like to miss anything. Yeah, and I'd like to mihi in this time of those race discussions, both sides of my lineage, both my mum's and my dad's. Like, I am who I am because of both of those lineages, and I'm grateful to be of both.
Yeah, thank you for walking both those worlds. And holding them together while allowing like their unique pulse.
It's complex, right? Nā hine motu e, nā tāne, nā wahine,